Welcome to SAM Conversations. I am Tarun Basu and I am talking to Venu Rajamony, Indian Ambassador to the Netherlands. Welcome, Ambassador Rajamony. Happy to have you on this conversation.
Thank you, Tarun. Delighted to join you.
Ambassador Rajamony has been based in The Hague since 2017, along with being India's permanent representative of India to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons and India's interface with the International Court of Justice, the Permanent Court of Arbitration, and other legal institutions that are based in The Hague. The 3 years of Ambassador Rajamony in The Hague as the ambassador has witnessed a spate of high-level visits, the visit of the Indian Prime Minister to the Netherlands in 2017, the return visit of the Dutch Prime Minister Michael Rutte to India in 2018, and to cap it, the first ever state visit to India by King Willem Alexander and Queen Maxima in October 2019. And one of the most interesting aspects of this visit is every time there's been a visit, the number of business representatives that have come from the Netherlands has been going up by leaps and bounds. And I think at the last visit of the King of Netherlands, there were as many as representatives of 140 Dutch companies who came to India. So, Ambassador Rajamony, my first question to you would be, in the 3 years you have been there, how close would you say have been Indo-Dutch ties politically and economically?
Well, Tarun, I would say that Indo-Dutch ties are at their best ever. Netherlands has always been a good friend and a close partner to us. But as you yourself described, we have never had such an intensity of political exchanges in close proximity to each other. Virtually every year we have been exchanging a high-level visit. And you did not mention the ministerial visits. There's also been our foreign minister coming here, Dutch foreign minister visiting India. We have had 3 chief ministers, the West Bengal chief minister, the Kerala chief minister, the Himachal Pradesh chief minister. So there's been a lot of action happening. And this is very substantive action because of the economic component. The economic relations is truly the anchor of the relationship. And it is little known that the Netherlands is the 3rd largest investor in India in terms of FDI. And equally, the Netherlands is the 2nd most important destination for foreign investments out of India after Singapore. Now, to some extent, this has to do with double taxation treaties and other convenient arrangements for international companies to come through the Netherlands to India or from India to go through the Netherlands to other places. But either way, Netherlands is an extremely important partner, and they have crucial strengths which match our needs. And that is where our focus has been all this while. And that is what is reflected in the large business delegations, the growing business delegations, which have accompanied high-level visits to India. There is a recognition that India offers huge opportunity, that the future is in Asia. And the Dutch, both the government and the business, are doing their best to try and increase the amount of attention that they pay to India.
Well, the Netherlands is the 2nd largest source of FDI into India. That is not so widely known, and that Netherlands is also the 3rd largest destination for Indian investments into.
Other way around. Third largest investor in India, 2nd most important destination.
2nd most, yeah. And I read about these the number of Dutch companies who have been coming to India with every visit, and the numbers were increasing. Now, what are the main areas of interest, and what are the main iconic Dutch companies that are known to operate in India and in South Asia?
Well, the iconic Dutch companies are so well known in India that many of us think of them only as Indian companies and not Dutch companies. Many of them came to India much before independence and have continued ever since. The most well-known example is Hindustan Unilever, which today contributes about 30% of Unilever's global revenue. We have Philips And Philips has now divided itself into two. We in India used to know Philips from the lights and from the transistor radios and whatnot, all of which has now gone out of their business. Now they are focused on one hand on healthcare, and they have hived off the lighting portion, renamed it as Signify, and that has a major presence in India. So Royal Philips focused on healthcare, and Signify focused on lighting has a major presence in India. And the other giant from the Netherlands is Shell, which has an important presence both in the upstream and the downstream business, and who are trying to go into gas, who are looking at non-conventional energy sources. So Shell also sees India as an important market of the future and has a major presence, including through one of the top R&D centers in Bangalore. Along with Houston and Amsterdam, Bangalore is their most important R&D center in the world.
Well, as you said, these names are so common in India. Many would think Philips and Unilever are almost Indian companies, are probably
That's
Indian companies. Many wouldn't know that they are Dutch companies.
They're Dutch in origin. I think
decades.
Hindustan Unilever in particular would like to see itself as an Indian company.
Exactly.
But let me also talk a bit about the sectors. You know, the very word Netherlands conjures up the image of water. And it is a small country which has battled with water for centuries. They have seen floods after floods. About 1/3 of the country is below the sea level. They live under threat of seawater rising, the impact of climate change, all of which could have major consequences to them in many existential ways. So water is an area of specialization for the Netherlands. They are known across the world for their ability to prevent floods, for inland water navigation, for the cleaning of water, for water management, for watershed management in many ways. In fact, even in the United States, when there are floods or when there are hurricanes, it is Dutch experts who reach there the first. So water is one of the most important areas where the Dutch have significant experience, and we have huge needs in our country, both in rural areas as well as urban areas, in terms of managing our rivers, in terms of our coastal shipping and inland water navigation, etc. Let me also mention that the port of Rotterdam is Europe's largest port. And it is through Port of Rotterdam that much of trade with Europe happens, especially to the hinterlands of Germany. There is a great deal India can learn also from collaboration in the field of ports and in the marine sector overall. Going beyond that, it is not perhaps known much that the Netherlands is the second largest agro exporter in the world. Despite having very small land territory, they have used technology and greenhouses to try and maximize the production of vegetables and fruits. This again is something which India can benefit from a great deal. They have very advanced in development of seeds, in various agricultural implements, in agricultural techniques, all of which have relevance to India as it looks at doubling our farmers' income, as it looks at expanding our agricultural footprint, dealing with the different variations in weather patterns, and at the same time conserving water and making sure that our agricultural practices are not harmful to the environment in any way. And then going on, we have identified health, we have identified science and technology, we have identified information technology, all as priority areas for collaboration.
While on the subject of water, I mean, I think while during your tenure, you also managed to bring out 2 books there. One on the larger India-Netherlands relationship, and one I think on what India, particularly states like Kerala and other states which are so flood-prone, what they can learn from the Netherlands example. So,
absolutely.
Especially with relation to Kerala, what do you think India, Kerala can learn from the Netherlands?
You know, the book on what we can learn from the Dutch rebuilding Kerala post-floods of 2018 was written in the aftermath of the biggest floods that Kerala had seen in 100 years.
That's right.
And through that book, what I talk about is how the Dutch experience is extremely valuable for Kerala as well as all of India. And the lessons that we must learn from the Dutch, number one, is that we must be prepared at all times. You're not going to be able to control water. You're not going to be able to control weather at all times. And because of climate change, extreme climatic events are happening across the world. There's either too much water or there is too little water. And we need to be prepared to deal with it. I talk in the book about how every Dutch child is taught to swim, and swim not just like normal swimmers, but with all their clothes and shoes on them, fully dressed, in anticipation of a flood which can come anytime, in anticipation of falling in water which can happen anytime. So I point out that in a state like Kerala, which has 40 rivers and which has a huge coastline, we still don't make swimming mandatory. Anybody knows how to use boats, and when the floods hit, people were so unhealthy and perhaps obese that they couldn't even wade through waters, and then we needed to have people from the outside come and lift up people and take them away. So there is need to reorient our mindset and culture to a culture of preparation for climatic events, especially water-related events.
Was your book the inspiration for the Kerala Chief Minister to visit the Netherlands with a delegation?
Absolutely. It was one of the inspirations. In particular, in my book, I talk about how Dutch philosophy in dealing with water has shifted from dikes and huge dams and building gates to prevent water to creating room for the river, to living with nature, to building with nature, to try and figure out how we can go along with nature to deal with the challenges that we are confronted with, rather than just try and create artificial barriers which do not stand the test of time. So the Kerala Chief Minister came here in particular to look at what the Dutch are doing in terms of room for the river project. And I'm very happy to inform you that the Kerala government is already in the process of implementing this project in the state, in the low-lying regions of Kerala, which are below the sea level, an area called Kuttanad, which is very similar to the Netherlands. This has actually become one of the most concrete examples of good cooperation between the two countries. The Dutch government has been very gracious to send experts to India to work with the Kerala government, and the Kerala government has been formulating plans and programs and seeking assistance from the World Bank to implement this project.
That's so good to know. Ambassador Rajamony, I also read somewhere that you are said to have re-engineered India's image in the Netherlands. Can you tell us something about that?
Well, I would start off by saying that in a place like Europe, it is not easy to bring a country like India onto the consciousness of the public. There are always competing demands. They are focused within themselves on European issues. After that comes the US, then come the big rich nations like Japan and then China. So competing for people's mind space has been one of my biggest challenges. And I plunged into the task from the time I arrived here by devising a number of unique programs which would connect with the Dutch people, which would involve them and which would bring great participation by them. These programs include, first and foremost, opening up my residence, the India House in Wassenaar, one of the elite suburbs of The Hague, to the public on 3 different occasions: on every Independence Day morning, every Republic Day morning, and on Monuments Day, which is celebrated across the Netherlands every year, and inviting people to come and see this 105-year-old heritage monument and to enjoy the 8-acre estate of which it is a part. Secondly, Yoga Day celebrations, which are now organized across the world and used to be organized in Netherlands. I shifted it from the city of The Hague, which is more the governmental capital, to Amsterdam, which is the most important commercial city, as well as it is the most happening city, the most well-known city in the country, and chose the most prestigious locations in Amsterdam, where no Indian event has ever happened, and converted Yoga Day celebrations into a one-day wellness festival. bringing in vegetarian food, which is becoming extremely popular in Netherlands, bringing in Dutch yoga gurus, and not just stopping with one half an hour or 1 hour session, but having a whole day of Dutch gurus, Indian music, Indian dance, exhibitions of Indian handicrafts, all intermixed with each other, with a grand finale of a music program featuring very eminent artists from India in the evening as a climax to the whole day event. So this event was first held in the Museum Plain of Amsterdam, which is in front of the National Museum. And the next year it was held in Dam Square, which is again one of the most important locations in Amsterdam, what could be called the heart of the city, in front of the Royal Palace. And on the second occasion, we even had members of the Dutch Armed Forces come and join us for these Yoga Day celebrations.
Oh, that's
and this year, because of the Corona situation, this year's Yoga Day celebrations had to go online, but we had the Dutch Defense Minister participated it through an online message. So the Yoga Day celebrations has been another major event. A third major event was to look at what are the big Dutch holidays. For example, the King's Day is a day when all country goes out on the streets and it is one big party. Once again, in particular in Amsterdam, where there are boats plying on the canals, people walking on the streets, flea markets all around. So I came up with this idea of a Bollywood on a boat initiative to promote tourism to India. With the help of tourism department in India, we hired a boat, we hired Bollywood dancers, European Bollywood dancers, to perform Bollywood dances and music on a floating boat with posters on all sides, inviting people to travel to India and to see India for themselves. This again was received extremely well.
This must have been a big hit, huge hit.
It was a huge hit. We had people in all the other boats and on the backs dancing with us as this boat traveled through the canals for an entire day. The other program which I'm very proud of is also connect to the city of The Hague, which prides itself as the city of peace and justice because of the location of the International Court of Justice. There, I decided to use Gandhi Jayanti, which is now declared by the UN as International Day of Nonviolence, to have for the first time peace marches through the streets of The Hague, bringing in ambassadors of all countries, Dutch dignitaries, to spread the message of nonviolence. And we combined it with an outreach program to schools of the Netherlands, inviting volunteers from the Indian community to go and to teach children what nonviolence is all about, what was Mahatma Gandhi's life, how did India get its independence, and what was his message. So this also has resonated very well with the local population. So the effort to re-engineer the image was to to get rid of the traditional image of India as a poor country or as a developing country, and to try and connect with Dutch people in areas of great interest to them. I would also mention in this regard, one of my most important achievements in this stay has been the writing of a book, which you mentioned earlier, India and the Netherlands, Past, Present and Future, which is a beautiful coffee table book, which was incidentally released by the King himself in the presence of the Queen, the Education Minister.
That has been a great honor. That must have been a great honor, yeah.
That Dutch and Indian dignitaries. So this was released as a curtain raiser to the King and the Queen's visit to India, their state visit. And this brings together the history of a relationship in a manner which has never been brought together before. When I first came to Netherlands, what I discovered is that whatever knowledge is available about Indo-Dutch history is mostly in Dutch records and Dutch books. And there is very little, while there are several segregated academic studies, nothing gives a whole picture. And that is what I have tried to do and to bring together in this book.
Oh, that's very vigorous and very intense. Unfortunately, a lot of this activity must have come to a, halt, suspended animation kind of thing because of the COVID.
I know.
I hope you are able to resume some of these, or at least whoever your successor is able to resume the intensity and the vibrancy and the diversity of the relationship. And but just a quick question on when you talked about some of the armed forces people doing yoga. I believe yoga has been introduced in part of the discipline of the Dutch Armed Forces, and
That
it's
that is
part of
correct.
their regular exercises.
That is right. They have over 43 teachers whom they have hired to teach their
Wow.
armed forces yoga. And the philosophy behind it is very interesting, which is that when people go into action, if you are in a difficult situation, you need peace of mind. You need to maintain your poise and your calm. And for this, yoga is very good. So they believe that yoga brings good, tremendous benefits to any kind of military or paramilitary or police formation.
Just the last question, Ambassador Rajamony, because you have covered virtually every aspect of the relationship. Since we are South Asia monitor, I need to ask a larger question on South Asia, and how much does the Netherlands and people have an interest in South Asia, which is home to a quarter of the human race? I mean, you know, India they have. What about the rest of the region?
I think the Dutch people have a great deal of interest in South Asia. Along with India, they have a lot of interest in Sri Lanka, where they had a major presence for over 100 years and more. In fact, I remember after the Easter bombings, the parliament passed a resolution of condolences, and the Sri Lankan ambassador to the Netherlands was invited to the parliament, and the prime minister as well as every member of parliament personally met him and conveyed condolences. There are a large number of Dutch monuments in Sri Lanka even today. There is a Dutch community, people of Netherlands in Sri Lanka. So there's a very close relationship with Sri Lanka. But equally with Bangladesh, which also shares geographical similarities to the Netherlands. It has a large delta region where big rivers which flow through India pour into Bangladesh, into the sea through Bangladesh, where a lot of water challenges are involved, where there are huge development challenges involved. The Netherlands is a very close partner. The Netherlands is equally an important partner of Afghanistan, where India and the Netherlands work closely together. So the Dutch have a very international outlook in their approach. Their foreign policy emphasizes trying to do the utmost in terms of both development aid as well as through international forums, where political support for these countries and their challenges are very important. So in all this, the Dutch government plays a very active role.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Rajamony, and I'm very glad we had this conversation. Much of what you said is really even news to me, and I'm sure many people who will be hearing this would be saying for the first time that much of the things that have happened between these two countries. And the reason they have not made the headlines because there's no controversy between the two countries.
That's
and
true.
No, nothing sensational. Yet
Correct.
the two countries have been growing closer and closer together, probably among the closest that India has with any country in Europe, and this covers absolutely every aspect of the relationship. So it's wonderful talking to you. Thank you for finding the time. And we would hopefully again talk about this relationship in sometime in the near future.
Thank you, Tarun. I enjoyed this discussion.